how I'm productive in the morning is waking up in the morning, getting things ready in the morning, having breakfast in the morning, making tea in the morning. What else? Looking at the news. Taking anecdotes. Taking down anecdotes. Looking at anecdotes. Regarding them. Taking down anecdotes. Working on them. Putting down what I'm thinking about, what I'm going to write about. Sometimes I just make it a mental note. And then sometimes it gets morphed into something else. I'll write a lot in a lot of different notebooks. Sometimes it doesn't make it to online. But then if it doesn't make it online, I don't get feedback. Being productive means I'm gonna get feedback. I'm fine with feedback. A lot of times it's not constructive though. A lot of times it's just personal feedback. It's just like, so I feel, how's this gonna help me as a person? But then those are the lessons that I learned. That everything's so personal in a personal world, in a personal society. It's like if you you talk to society, society listens. Realize that. I'm realizing that. I'm like, those are the lessons. Realizing that so much simplicity seems to lead to frustration, but it is not in the frustration. Because realizing so much, but then being stuck in realization sometimes doesn't help. You feel like it's like, I didn't realize that, but now I'm realizing this, and it's like, oh, it's not really down to it's not down to science. People aren't down to science, which is somewhat part of the reason why I feel some things. But these are, what I believe, what I see is just my own, just making sure I'm not going to lean back on something that's bad. What I see and what I believe is just down to observations. And everything is somewhat tentative in thoughts, because they're going to change. Some things are going to stay and remain. The good thoughts and that are going to stay. Those are what's going to be remembered. The things are bad are going to be forgotten. That's something I've learned too. So it's good not to just it's good not to focus on the bad. And I think that helps with people who have depression, who do have that. I know I got these huge bags under my eyes. And I point it out just because it's like, but it's really early in the morning and I haven't had tea. A lot of times I feel, and I read this a while ago from a tweet from one of the people I follow, that Tumblr is a great community to listen to and to be a part of, to learn from, just to see. Just because of how much you are a part of that. Just because sometimes you don't say anything, but you're there. Sometimes you're the person that sits in the corner and kind of, sometimes you're going to write about stuff and you're just kind of writing. But everyone takes things personally. But recently, I have read another tweet, and it was about how it's not about taking things personally. And then the overall picture is that it's just a game. It's okay. Just, be at ease with it, So it's kind of like that, to kind of not feel afraid. And it's not so much that life is to be afraid of it, because that's never what I've been afraid of. Maybe it's just people. Maybe that's why I always feel like people should help people. And yes, I love talking to people, but I feel like, it's always to help. It's always to be there and listen and to look to people to help those less fortunate. It's not like you isolate yourself, but it's almost like, what is it that you're around? What is it that you're around? What is it truly? It's not like you're sending an SOS. It's sort of like, this is just in general what I've sort of understood. It's not to say like, I don't mind being alone, I don't mind doing this, I don't mind doing that. It's not really like that. It's just sort of like, the next step. Sort of like something that, to be aware of what is, never to be, to be aware of just whatever can come. As someone who is, surviving from everything. Maybe I look up so far. You just want to keep looking up and up and up, because you just keep wanting to hope. And maybe that turns into like looking into the stars and outer space. But then you just, okay, I'm going to stop looking up because I want to look around. That's what I feel. Because not everything is going to be right or correct. I know that. I don't mean that this is always right, this is always correct. I believe in a lot of things. I'm a passionate person. I am. I have I'm only going to be passionate about things no matter what it is. Not to say no matter what it is. If I'm passionate about something, I'm going to be passionate about something. If I got an idea in my head, I'm passionate about it. But It's sort of like writing with what you know. I've gone camping a lot, so I wrote about the petrified forest. I've had an experience there. And I wrote about it because it's what I know. People feel like it's confusing, but I didn't write it for people. I wrote it about me, for myself, because it's something I know, it's something I've learned. Because people, like, graffiti on trees, people carve things on trees. And then once you carve something on a tree, once you do something on a tree, it's going to be forever there. There's no going back for that on a tree. The sap pours out, and becomes crystallized a lot of times, But, just because you put yourself in something else, you're visualizing yourself in another object doesn't mean, not an object, just because you're visualizing yourself in something that is something else that is living, or that is living history, doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. It just means that here is just a concept. Yeah, adding another layer, because what is a fossil but many layers of information to be discovered? That is a new discovery, and I feel like I'm making new discoveries in myself. I feel like I don't mind having to explain one poem. Do I have to write like everyone wants me to write? No. Will I? No. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. It's just like sometimes some people will, some people won't. What is done, what is not done. Well, just because I'm doing things at my own pace doesn't mean that it's not going to get done. Doesn't mean that. Because something is going to happen this year. Because everything's already, going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Everything, people are their own momentum. People are made of energy. Of course they are their own momentum. What is the science behind people? What is the beauty behind people? What is, the and like, when I say people are art, I mean people are beautiful. I mean, everyone is beautiful. Everyone sees something differently. Everyone is their own beauty. That's what I mean by the philosophy of people are art. I don't mean to take away and say, like, oh, they aren't this, they aren't that, this isn't that. I don't mean anything. I'm just saying people are beautiful. That was my whole thing on that. Just because people get upset about something because they take it from a different perspective, that is just because that is their own perspective. But it's just that, like, I believe all people are beautiful. That is all. And then people are like, oh, okay, just because that. I'm like, let's look at this cartoon, let's look at this, let's look at that, let's take and all this different type of information. And I'm like, there's so much information that comes at you every day. Being able to interpret it, process it, it's not so much an information overload. It's more like, wow, this is really compelling. How is it that I'm supposed to? How is it to write everything down? How is it to, like, completely encompass it and form it, and then spit it out in a way that is gonna be like this, because I feel like, whoa, everything is so fascinating. Everything. It's like everything is so fascinating. The best way to feel that is just to read, and it's just to take little segments. It is segments. I mean, that's what news is. News is segments. But what is, but yet, there's different types of agendas and different types of news organizations. I'm not interested in, I'll say this, I'm not interested in getting caught up in dating. I'm not getting interested in getting caught up in a lot of things at all. I'm just interested in doing what I feel is right for myself. Because people feel like, oh, do this and do that. Oh, this is that. And I'm like, if people spent less time talking and gossiping about things, it would just be a lot easier. Because it's not about those sort of things. I haven't been about that. I mean, yes, it's about love and that. And I've always believed in all spirituality. Just because I don't say, oh, I believe in this and believe in that. It's just like all spirituality. And sometimes it's like this and sometimes it's like that. And there can, there's something really great and grand. You can be whatever you feel, what you believe. You don't have to I'm not preaching anything. Because you feel I preach something, you put me at a higher standard. Now, you do not need to do that either. And it's like, oh, don't tell me what not to do. I'm like, okay, then don't listen. Don't watch this. Don't listen. Turn this off right now. Whatever makes you upset is what's making you upset. Just because I like listening to older music, sacred music, all types of music, you should never limit yourself. That's why it's like all spirituality. That's why it's like everything, all of this. And later I can figure things out for myself. But due to great learning, due to great listening, people are going to be negative about things. They're going to be negative. The reason why I've come so far in my life, and you may feel that it's not, but really, you feel I am lost somewhere, but I know where I am. You feel I haven't moved, but I've gone very far. I've gone very far in my mind. And people say, what is reality? What isn't reality? But nothing is to be determined. It is whatever you wish to be written. It could be whatever you want to write. It can be whatever you want to do with your life. Just because there are a little bit negative stuff does not outweigh the great stuff. What I feel is to be productive really is truly to have a good life. Because if you keep that in mind, really know what you're gonna have. And those that you share it with can have a good life too. I think that's all. And I hope no one takes this too seriously. And by no one, I mean everyone. Because, as everything is always said, you know, everyone has their own life to live. And I feel pretty good about that because it's nice. And it's always just writing and trying to figure things, not really trying to figure things out, but just writing things down.